Wow. Well, it's a great morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Uri Schneider, lead at Schneider Speech. And if there was ever a morning for a conversation, and if there was ever a morning to have a conversation with someone from Michigan, this is that morning. And as I wrote in my last post on social, there's obviously consequential things going on with elections, and every vote that everyone cast is important, and I hope everyone exercised their democratic voice. But today, I think the most important thing is to let the process play itself out, and for us not to stay glued to each and every microsecond. This will come to closure sooner or later, and we all need to plug into things that bring us health and strength and positivity in our personal lives, and create conversations and connections with each other from the bottom up, because we can really influence the environment that we live in. We can influence our communities, our cities, our states, and even our country and the whole world through the conversations we share, specifically with people that are not like us, that may not look like us, or might not talk like us, or have experiences that are not the same as our experiences. And that's what brings us here today. So, big treat, and I'm really happy to be here. And on Sunday, I hope everyone, if you're busy, want to come back. We've got an amazing conversation coming up with another great guest on Sunday. Look on Facebook events on Schneider Speech. But for now, at this very moment, we are here with Cathy Olish-Maciejewski.
Oh, you did it.
Maciejewski. Every time I wrote your name, I don't know if you could do this when you're on the phone with like customer service, but every time I had to remember how to spell your last name, I would just say to myself, being Jewish, Maciejewski. Perfect. So Maciejewski, yeah?
Yes, that's correct.
Amazing. Well, it's a big treat to have you, and just to share with people, you know, with whom they have the privilege to be with today. Cathy is just an incredible person. She is in HR over at the Ford company, and she'll talk about that. She's a person who grew up with a stutter. She'll be sharing with us the experience from the inside and the path of where it's taken her, and surprising treasures and strengths along the way, and also the experience of trying to keep it kind of covert and somewhat not on the surface, the obstacles and the breakthroughs, and what messages of hope and wisdom we can share with others. So she's from Michigan, from a beautiful little island. I should tell us more maybe. She works in executive recruiting at the Ford Motor Company. She's been a member of the NSA, the National Stuttering Association, for 21 years. She's been on the board of directors. She has facilitated groups for adults, for kids. She's been a chapter leader, and she's led more than 60 workshops. In her personal life, she is a wife, mom of 2 boys, and she enjoys photographing and videoing. And I won't share the funny video that we connected over. That was one of the funniest videos I ever saw. But yeah, there's a lot here to connect, and really, really gracious of you to take the time in a day, especially like today. So thanks for coming on, and maybe introduce yourself to everybody.
Hello, thanks for having me. I've been wasn't up all night watching, you know, the election, but I am from Michigan. Here's where I live. Us who live here always use our hand as a map. So we've been all over the news. So I'm glad that piece is over with. But yes, I live in Grosse Ile, which is an island between Canada and a town called Wyandotte in Michigan. Newly to this area, come from the Royal Oak area where we have a very active NSA chapter there. We moved out here just for a change. I worked at Ford. I've been at Ford for 25 years already in HR, as I said. My prior role was in the executive personnel office, where I was the vice president and board of directors. Myself and my manager were their main contacts. So at any given moment, a vice president could call me. I met with all of the new ones. So being a person who stutters, that was quite challenging at times. And now I'm in executive recruiting, where I'm part of the team that brings on the higher level employees. Married for 8 years. Yesterday was 8 years, and we enjoyed a meal in because of all that's going on in the world. And have two boys, 7 and 5, and they're both they both stutter. So being a queen of coverts, it was at first it was difficult on many realms to deal with. And I like exercising, working out when I have time. And the last 8 months, I've secretly enjoyed it because I've had more time to be at home with my husband and my boys, and I've got to nurture friendships in this area. I've only lived in a few years, and so I secretly like it, but I miss being social and being out there and shopping more and everything. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Now, you told me that to do this, you wanted to really make it a point to bring your whole self. So you actually took the day off. What would compel a person like you in the position that you're in to take a limited day off to devote to this? What does this mean to you? What does this conversation mean to you? Why does it matter?
Well, I had some time off I needed to take, but I was waiting till the end of the year. And I thought, I dropped the kids off at 9. I want to give this my undivided attention because I've done some of these before. I've watched many of these interviews before, the podcast, and you never know who you can help. So I wanted to give this my undivided attention. I didn't want to be interrupted by work emails or pings as I'm online or someone calling my cell phone. So I mean, I think the key to getting people to accept people who stutter, to improve their reactions, is educating them. I think the majority of times when people laugh at you or me, like, don't you know your name? I'm not good at telling why. I just kind of blow it off. It's because they don't know. So this is a great forum to educate those, or someone who may be feeling alone at home, not knowing where to turn. So it was important enough to get my head into this. So I picked today to take the day off and enjoy my hour with you, and hope to help others along the way.
Wonderful. So maybe let's go backwards. What would be your takeaway message? What would you hope that if someone just stops watching right now, they've got limited time, they're stealing away, what's the message that you would wish that someone might take away that you would like to share?
There's probably the key is, as I said, you're not alone. There's, and that we're the only people that it really matters to. I used to come home after a bad day. I couldn't say my name in a meeting, and I used to cry, and I used to think, oh my God, everyone's talking about me. I'm just going to be known as a girl who can't say her name. And then being involved in the NSA and having a great support system from other friends who I met in the NSA and people who stutter, I can turn to them. And the more open you are about it with your friends, family, or whomever, as long as you have someone to talk to and the tools, that you realize over time, they don't go home and talk about it, like, oh, this girl at work couldn't say her name, because everyone has their own baggage. It happens to be mine. It may happen to be yours as well. And, take the time, there's local meetings, there's even AIS, there's Friends for Kids. I mean, there's help out there. It's just putting yourself out there to get help. But you can do all that. But what helped me the most, and many of us, is meeting other people who walk in our shoes, because those are the only people who can really understand what it's like to block and to not talk like other people can. So I think it's just the point of you're not alone, and reach out, connect to people, and that's going to make a huge difference.
I think that's so important. And if we could just hang up here, we could, because that's the whole takeaway. Cathy just got it. And what I think is really noble and noteworthy is the people like Cathy and so many others who've had these conversations to pay it forward You know, I think that you look at people like Cathy and you say, wow, she's really got it. You know, she's got the dream, she's got the family, she's got the job. She's able to talk about this very sensitive thing. And so many people are earlier on in the journey. And then when you get to a certain point, you kind of like feel like you've arrived and you just go on. But I think looking back and sharing that encouragement, that message, and being such a role model is such a noble thing. So I think I thank you on behalf of others, and I hope that others realize that the version of yourself or the version of me or the version of Cathy that you see today wasn't the same at 18, 15, you know, and in some ways might even seem almost preposterous. Like you can't draw a line from that younger 12-year-old self, 20-year-old self, the worries, what you thought you were entitled to, what you thought you had in store in life, what kind of family or relationship you could be worthy of, or that someone would take you and love you for who you are, jobs and so on. Do you want to share anything about that? I think that's a really interesting perspective, because I think when you arrive, you know, you might not even realize how valuable that could be to reflect back to people who are earlier on, and they need some real hope. And people like you, Cathy, you are real hope, you know, and I think maybe if you'd like to go there, I think it could be really insightful and encouraging for people.
Thank you. Yeah, it took a long time to get here, and I'm not even where other people, I should say, are or some want me to be. So when I was a child, you know, I went to, I would see the school SLP, you know, and there were a few other kids, and once I hit junior high, I decided I wanted to blend in. So, you know, no kid wants to have a zit, or, you know, everyone wants to belong. So I began to hide it. And that lasted. So my mom thought it magically went away. We never really talked about it in my home. When I was a child, I just went and saw an SLP 2 times a week. So I get out of high school and I choose to work. I continue to hide, and was having a bad week, looked up, you know, went on the web and looked up, you know, stuttering help, found the NSA, printed everything, you know, it was like this big, every page, put it away. 6 months later, pulled it out when I was ready for help. The key is really to be ready. So you may know we're here or there's help available. It's taking that big leap. And so I took the leap. A friend of mine, Sarah D'Agostino, she also, someone I knew her, and she was a person who's the other two, gave her the packet, went to our first meeting, and that's where my journey began. But it even took several years for me to openly block in front of anyone. I continued to hide. Probably about 3 years into it, went to my first NSA conference. Everyone thought I was an SLP. So it took me years, many years, to openly stutter in front of people, even at the conference.
And I just for people, and you've got a lot of friends that are commenting. So Doug and Anita and a bunch of others that are familiar to me and unfamiliar to me, a bunch of people watching. Your likes, your comments, your questions, will kind of weave them together into the conversation. But for people that are not familiar, Cathy, why were people thinking that you were a professional and not a person who stutters? Because there is something interesting there, and I just don't want to take it for granted. Can you kind of unpack what that meant when you said that about covert? There are people who stutter, and I often meet parents and people along the way in life, and they'll say, yeah, no, I have the stutter. It's not like the one you see in the movies. It's not like the one, you know, like,
Yeah.
So you're describing your experience, and I think it's nice to have a name for it, but I think let's not take for granted. What does that mean for people that may not be familiar? What does that mean about your experience?
Oh, yeah. So people thought I was a speech language pathologist because I was fluent, because I'm so hidden. And I would do anything to not let anyone know that I was a person who stutters. Even to this day, I do that. I'm a little bit more open now, but when there were a lot of SLPs who attended the annual conference, and a majority of them don't, you know, that's just their role, that's, you know, their job, and they help people who stutter with other speech and impediments. So I didn't feel like I fit in because I didn't stutter enough for the stuttering community, but I wasn't fluent enough in the regular word. It's kind of like you're caught in an elevator and you're caught between two floors. Like you don't know where you fit in. And I struggled with that for many years because I was so in tune to like ways of hiding it. Like I'll cough or sneeze or rephrase my words. I was so used to doing those avoidances that I didn't allow my blocks out. So there's some people who doubted I did. So it's.
Did you ever doubt it?
And no, but when I was younger, my 20s and even younger than that, there were times, there were days that would go by. I'm like, I didn't block, but I was so good that I fooled myself. And then I'd hit one block that seemed like it was a 5-minute block. And then, okay, I do, but I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know anyone except a 5-year-old boy who stuttered, who I used to go to speech with. So, just the hiding things. I mean, and I would go to any extent. I mean, we would go out to the bar. I'd change my name. My friends would change their name. They thought it was cool. I'd give everyone a nickname. They had no idea why I was doing this. And it wasn't until I was probably.
I tried changing my name too because nobody could say it. And I don't know if your maiden name or married name is Maciejewski, but that would also be a reason to change your name. But you're not talking about your last name. You're talking about your first name. No, I'm talking about
my first name. Actually, Olish, I'm Olish at work because Olish is easier to say and I've been there long enough. So that's my excuse. Maciejewski is a little bit harder. And when I spell it, I can't always get the W out. So I chose to remain Olish at work and it's easier to say. No, but even changing my name, like if I was calling anywhere and they needed my name and I never talked to them again, I always went by Ann because Ann was easier to say. And sometimes I'd get caught up in it and my friends would hear me and I would just make up something. But I'd rather be seen as a Polish airheady person than let them know what I'm doing with my words is I'm really avoiding. So that's how far I'd go. And even to this day, I'm a little bit better, but I still have my moments where I'd rather have someone think I'm not as smart than see me block. And that's what I deal with often. And I think in this point in the game, it's too late on my end to change. Like the few friends I've told, there's only been a handful. I can probably count on both. And some of it has to do with some of them have met friends in the NSA and I had to disclose so the few friends I've told, I still hide around them. So why tell the world I stutter? What you're seeing here is not if someone else was in this room, one, I wouldn't be talking about this. And two, you wouldn't hear all these disfluencies because I would totally be on my game trying to hide. Sometimes I'm a little bit more relaxed now, but I don't know. I feel like it's ingrained. Like I lead 2 lives and I don't know how to find a happy medium. I don't post on my feed about NSA or stuttering. I don't do any of that. I don't know if I ever will. And I don't really know why. I mean, part of it is I know I'll feel accepted. I just think then people will think I was lying about who I am, even though I don't know. It's very confusing. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but there's
so much to it. And I think it says a lot to just even open that up and say, look, I haven't totally wrapped my head around, making sense of this whole thing. I'm just being open that I have a pull in each direction. And I've done some pretty interesting things like changing my name, or at work, I've kind of created an identity with the easier name. And I don't think I'm going to change it, but maybe I should, but why would I? Feeling a little bit torn. I think, first of all, there's a lot of strength in that, just in that.
Thank you. And my son, my oldest, when he was 6, about a year ago, he was, I forget where we were, but his friend was teasing him, just like kind of mimicking him. And he just told him to stop. And I looked at him like, geez, why can't I do that? I just kind of laugh it off, or I don't even say, oh, by the way, I have a speech impediment. I just let people, so it's like he's teaching me, to like not let people do that. So it's kind of having kids who do have definitely changed my view, because I have to be less ashamed. I don't let them, I encourage them, here's how you respond if you get teased. And I make sure they don't hear me talk about something like this, about how for years I was ashamed, because I don't want them to be. And now we might have a president and we had a vice president, and they both know, he's stutters. I hate that. I hate that word. Is such a hard word to say. Can we change that, please? So it's just, I don't know. It's just this baggage that I don't know if I'll ever unpack, but I've watched others by all of the workshops I've done comment, hide it. And a lot of them become so open, and it's so refreshing to see. But as you look back, you never imagine yourself in the place. So who knows, maybe one day I'll be completely open about it. But right now, as long as you don't let it get in the way of what you do and say, then, keep on moving on.
Keep on moving.
Yeah.
Keep on trucking. Well, I know we got, again, some very nice common friends. So just tell you who's giving you some shout outs. Some of them I don't know. But Adam Worth, always dependable, from upstate New York. Christine Simpson. This is a name I'm not sure I'm going to get right. LJ Gamoto.
Oh, LJ.
LJ, there you go. Bob Cost and Russ Hicks, our good friend Russ Hicks.
Yes.
Funny, we were talking before the call, and I listened to your podcast that you did with Pam Mertz, which was amazing. And you shared a pivotal experience with Russ. So as we were talking about it, my phone, like Siri or something, picked up that I wanted to talk to Russ Hicks, and all of a sudden I'm calling Russ Hicks. I hung up quickly. I didn't get to tell him it wasn't a pocket dial or this dial. It was just a accidental. Calls me back. So that's why we got on late. I was speaking to Russ. So hey, Russ, Tom Sharstein from Florida, Doug Scott from Texas, Anita Blom from Sweden, Steph Lebsack from, I hope she's home. I can't keep track.
Yes,
But Ben and
me
Jerry's.
too.
Ben and Jerry's is on the way, wherever you are in Colorado. Lots of love to you, Steph. And Nina G. Nina G, I want something funnier from you, but she says she's so proud. So this is great. Again, your likes, your comments, your questions, we'll try to integrate. But if you can share this, in the groups, especially in the community, not too far out there, because we don't want to be too out there. But if you want to share this in the community of people who stutter, I think that the nuance that we're touching on, I think the courage and the achievements that Cathy embodies, and at the same time sharing that it's a work in progress. It's a tension. It's not a point of absolute openness, and it's also not a point of absolute hiding. There's shades of gray along the way, and I think the idea of everyone finding their balance. And I think I would love to touch on that, Cathy, because there's a lot of conversation, obviously, in the community, especially now. Wonderful book, Stuttering, Pride and Prejudice, Stammering, Pride and Prejudice. There's so much good stuff out there from so many of our good friends. And in the research, we see such value to being open, right? And disclosing, and just being, I think openness is the word I really like, from Hope Gerlach and Naomi Rogers, and Patricia, of course. So the idea of openness on the one hand, and on the other hand, here you are, look how far you've come, how much you've achieved. You're doing this Facebook Live, and you said if there were other people in the room, they wouldn't hear you stutter. You'd be on your game, which I guess is the game of suppressing any kind of disfluency from coming out. Yeah. And yet, there are a few of our friends in the room, so to speak. You didn't shy away from this. You leaned into this. So I find that so interesting. In other words, for you, there's a level of wanting to keep a certain level of covert, a certain level of, this is my thing. I don't want to be putting it out there entirely. But there's also tremendous courage that you're even having this conversation, and that you've done all the things you have done. And you're also a mom of two kids who are finding their way and doing things a little differently than you might have done. And that's so interesting. So I just want to touch on this idea. Do you think it's a virtue to be 100% open, 100% committed to full disclosure, full openness in every situation? It's like integral? Or do you think as a virtue, there's actually virtue to finding the balance that works for you in different, communication situations? Because I think that that's an interesting point of view to consider.
For me, it's kind of a balance. As you mentioned earlier, years ago, I would never even consider talking about this with anyone, being open about it. But I feel like I need to help other people who may be lost right now, or who just may need to hear an encouraging story. What I've been into many debates with people who are overt, who cannot hide. I believe anyone who can at one time would have, because why? I find it hard to believe, and there's many people who are so severe who can't. And I've been in many debates with many people. I would never encourage it. So some people have accused me of encouraging it. I don't. I'm just here to share my journey, my viewpoint. One has helped me. I'm definitely more open than I used to be. I envy people who can just let it all out there, advertise all over their social media. I don't know. It's like, I feel if I do, every time I talk, people are going to notice, like, oh, she just did there, she just did there. And I don't know. It's just a thing I play with inside. But I believe if people are doing and saying what they want to do, it doesn't matter, and it only matters to themselves. So I don't avoid. I go out, I make friends, I have fun. I may switch my words around a lot, and sometimes I don't make sense, but I don't avoid doing things or saying things. I mean, I could have easily taken other jobs where I don't meet with the high level people. I mean, it could be intimidating. When I first did this, I'm like, why am I doing this? And I had things that I would do before I met with them. I get days of rest before, I wouldn't eat hours before, so there's things that I would do, but I wouldn't encourage anyone to. For me, it just works. And I've been more open in the new area we live in. And with my kids, people will say, oh, and I'll sometimes say, well, I also am a person who stutters. I pick and choose who I share it with. But to have a support for other people, to have their family or friends know they can help them. I mean, and if you're not going to share with them, we're all here. There's a huge community of people who are here to help you. So there's no one answer for everyone.
I think, would you agree that I think I'm going to say this and tell me if you would agree or you would modify it, but the community that exists is one that people often find too late, or surprised that exists and wish they found it sooner. There's a community of people, whether it's online or in these national or international organizations. And if you can, please pop those links of those organizations, the wonderful nonprofit organizations that exist. You can pop that in the comments. But would you agree that it's important and it's a virtue that there isn't one way, that there's no one way to be, there's no one size fits all? Would you say that that's correct?
I would agree. I mean, I'm just glad when I was a kid, I didn't even know about, I don't even know how long AIS has been around, Friends, NSA. I don't even know. And that would have made a world of a difference if we had known. And now with Biden being in the news more, that's shed a lot of light on that. And I hope it's helped others seek help. Hey, if the vice president, maybe president can talk about it, maybe I can do what I want to do, or, I can seek help. I just think it's key. The more we get the message, like the King's speech, that was great. If I had years ago, one, I would have gone to the movies alone. We went as a chapter which was fun. But even then I was like, who am I going to see at the show? But I just think that's key. If it would have made a world of a difference had I known about this as a kid. And that's why we're doing everything we're doing and sharing the message. And it's
Totally.
It's to parents too. Parents
Yeah.
also need to seek help and, resources outside the school, and
I'm gonna just say one thing about this last point, and then I'd love to go into the interesting places of work and how you've kind of navigated that, because that's fascinating. And also as a mom, you've got your story, and now you're raising two young boys. Fascinating. So, but just to just flesh this out, I think it's something that could be an entire podcast in and of itself. But I think that the idea, the virtue of the self-help community, and I think for professionals to get into this too, and for parents, that there's no one way. No two kids in the family should have the same exact expectations upon them, right? No two kids can perform exactly the same as one another. No two communicators are going to function exactly the same. Someone might be from Texas, but they don't have such a thick Texas accent, or the Texas accent that you attribute to someone from Texas. No, you don't sound, you must not be really from Texas. No, really, I was like born and bred in Texas, but I just don't. No,
there's
can't
a
be.
Russ Hicks and a Doug Scott. They sound different.
There you go. Throw in Lee Reeves and you can have a whole trio right there. Three musketeers. But I think it's interesting that in the stuttering community, for it to also realize that people come to the stuttering community or self-help community, they come because they find their people, and they find people that get it, that finally someone understands this whole mental gymnastics, this whole facade, this whole other identity as Anne, when really you're Cathy. They get it. They don't look at you and say like, what, are you weird? They get it. And I just want to encourage that within the community and the Facebook groups, we continue to have that level of openness that brought us here, in the sense that we tolerate and accept and welcome people where they're at and for the choices that they make that are right for them, while giving opportunities and options and examples of ways other people are going, but never to have, I feel like now, and there have been times, there's like a push a little bit more to the left or a little bit more to the right. I'm not talking about politics, but like covert, for example, it's thought of as something that might be lock, stock, and barrel, unacceptable, unhealthy, and you need to change it as soon as possible and really open up 100%. At the same time, there are people like you that seem to be living pretty nicely, living a very full, rich, imperfect life like the rest of us. But it's not like if you were 100% open and out there, do you think everything would just kind of get an upgrade, or do you feel like you're functioning in a way that works well for you? And is that okay? Is that good enough?
I think about that occasionally. If I had been more open when I was younger, there's some friendships that didn't happen because, picking up the phone. I think caller ID was the greatest thing ever invented, because, hey, I'm calling you, it's me. And I wouldn't say hello. I'd make a joke or I do something. Most of the time I wouldn't say my name. So it may have made me more open to more friendships. But other than that, I think I would have done most of the same things I've done. I would have been more open in class, raising my hand. Although I was pretty good at hiding it then even, but I don't know. When there's people I know who hide it all the time and they avoid it, or people who are overt say, I can hide it by not opening your mouth or talking, I should say, or avoiding a situation. That's not being covert. That's just avoiding. When you're covert, you face it and you deal with it, and you somehow be seen as fluid. So I don't think my life would be any different. But now, if I was more overt, I think I would do better at work too, because I sometimes don't say what I wanted to say and using the right words, or I'll just, I'll email them after this meeting with my views. And that, I think, is the one key piece where it's really, if I would just be completely open, or if I didn't have this, I think I may do a little bit better at, because I tend to like keep my opinions to myself. But outside of work, I don't know if I'd be any different than I am now.
Well, I think that's amazing. And I think, you know, just it may be controversial. I would say people look for balance. They don't want to have tension. You know, you don't want to have that tension of like, well, I don't really know where I am on that continuum of overt, covert. Like I'm not there yet. I still have ways to go. I see I'm not where these other people are at. That was something that you said.
Yes.
And I think that creates a
Yeah.
certain tension of like their yardstick is the way I measure myself, as opposed to finding your way. You got your Mount Everest. As long as you're climbing and you're moving and you're doing what you love climbing. You know, there's a certain inherent tension. I don't think we reach a point of balance, of equilibrium. It's a point of constantly kind of riding a healthy tension. In a certain place, you might decide, you know, a word switch or an email or a message instead of a phone call might be adequate and more effective in that moment with that situation. Whereas going into a networking event or the Christmas party as Anne at this point in your life might be you know, that's not going to be good, right?
No,
So I
no, I haven't.
wonder if a healthy tension is okay. I wonder if there's a way not to measure ourselves by other people's yardsticks.
No, and I haven't changed my name to Anne. It's been like 3 or 4 years, you know, and then, you know, I've gotten better at, you know, saying my names, and there's certain ways of doing it. Like, you know, I'll sometimes say Athy. Well, you know, people know my name. They might not hear the C. So I've done that before. There's
There's all kinds of
there's
little.
yeah, you know, my name is, oh, I thought I knew that girl, Cathy, you know, so there's so many different ways of doing it. But I mean, I don't feel I'd be a different person.
Right.
But,
right. So
you know,
that's,
you are who you are.
And being at ease with who you are and then choosing how you handle it. That's how we choose to adapt. I think for kids, for young people, for parents with kids, or for young adults, or for not such young adults, recognizing that you choose how to adapt. And for the most part, you're pretty good at it. And then there are certain things that are maladaptive. You know, so if you're choosing to, before the phone call or before the meeting, having a little drink of alcohol, that doesn't go down a path that is healthy. That would be
No.
maladaptive and goes down a bad path. But if every time you get on the call, you have a little preamble like, hey, how you doing? This is Cathy. A little introduction of some sort that helps you.
I do. Yep.
How do you know? So those adaptations you might feel because someone told you don't ever do that. Go right into it. Be open, be direct, be all those things. I think it's important we recognize there's maladaptive stuff like name changing and, you know, taking the pain away by numbing it with alcohol or drugs or things like that. But then there are things that are legitimate ways to adapt. And if they're healthy, if kids are adapting in healthy ways, if teens are adapting, if adults are, that's great. What parents and adults should do is look out for the maladaptive stuff and just change.
Ooh, did I lose you? Oh. I lost ya. Ooh. Oh no. Oh, I lost you. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Where's the chat? Can you see me or could you see him? Oh boy, I don't know what to do. Well, everybody. Can someone type if they see me right now? Because I don't know what to do. Oh, okay. Doug's saying go ahead and talk. So now I feel like a fool. Well, let me talk about my work then. In my old role, I was the HR contact for vice presidents and above. And I would do things if I knew I had a meeting with them. I would drive my husband around nuts. I would spend 4 or 5 days before going to bed on time. I wouldn't eat hours before because I felt like I was more fluent without full belly. I would begin, say, hello, how are you? It's finally nice to meet you. Oh, by the way, my name is Cathy, because most of them I would email for days upon days before I met with them. I'd go over, I'd jump over words that I missed, or I'd jump over words that I can't say, but I somehow always got the message across. My manager would usually be in the meeting with me too, which was very, it just added to the tension in the room. And sometimes she'd add more things that I missed, and I was okay with that, but I was very good at, after the meeting, to email them and send them any additional information they needed, and when they could call her and I if they needed anything. And a lot of them tended to call me, I think because I was so friendly and more talkative, because I was sometimes talking around words. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. So when the opportunity came upon myself to go into executive recruiting, I decided to, oh, there he is. There he is. We're going to have to edit this piece out. What happened?
We're back.
Yes, Doug was like, we can see you keep talking. And I was like, what do I want to talk about?
I'm so happy. So Doug, I'm going to just, Cathy, you keep crushing it. There's so much great feedback. And I think I call that a Zoom stutter right there. That was like a technology interruption in fluency. And if you just hang in, good things will come. So Cathy, I don't know what you said, but I'm sure it was gold, because I'm hearing from all kinds of channels.
I want to edit that piece out.
Okay, people are eating it up.
Oh,
which part did you want to edit out? The you part or the me saying that was a tech stutter?
No, the me part that I was going, where are you? Hello, I don't know can you hear me, Doug? Can you hear me?
No problem. I'll edit that out. Don't worry about it. We'll make everything look good. We'll make it like it was fluent.
Okay.
What would you say? Yeah, so I was saying, I think enough on that point. I guess I got a hint from my technology over here. Let's go into talking about the aspects of your life, either on the professional side. Again, it's surprising to people, maybe surprising to 20-year-old Cathy, that you find yourself in the career that you do, and how you are received, and how you go through that on a day-to-day basis, and then maybe reflecting on being a mom and a wife and being in a relationship and having a family. Again, the today Cathy, the younger version Cathy, and how we got to where we are, and then this added dimension of being a mom of 2 boys that are also showing a bit of stuttering. So any of those, where do you want to go first?
Oh yeah, well, work is a big thing. And as you were chatting, I thought about my old self, and I would have never, ever thought I'd be in my current role or my prior role at the age of 20. So I began working at Ford. My first job there was, I was really young, and it was a call operator basically. So we would take lost calls, and I would transfer them to the right departments. I'd take over 100, 150 calls a day. And the first couple of weeks, there was someone on the line monitoring me just to kind of make sure I know what I was doing. And that was so nerve wracking, but I was fluent. I was on my game because that was at the point in my life where I wasn't telling anybody what was going on. So again, I may use some words, but I got the job done and it was great. I did that for a year and a half, moved on to another role. And then in my third role was in the executive office. And I had no qualms. Like, I knew I'd be talking to vice presidents. I didn't think so as much, but that it evolved into a lot more. And somehow I just did it. I just dove in. I'd see someone's name on my caller ID and I'm like, I just would answer. And I think because I was so friendly and I chit-chatted a lot, you kind of, warm up the room. So that made me more comfortable. And then I could pick and choose the words that I want. There's certain words that I did have minor blocks on, and that was fine. But I would have never thought I could be in that role. And then the current role I'm in now, it's related. And I'm talking to executives that we just hired and high level employees all over worldwide basis. And somehow I know I have to do a job. I always get my job done. And sometimes I cause myself more work by having to do more work on the back end. But I did, however, I was in a town hall meeting when I first got into my prior role with VPs, a couple of years into it. And there was a vice president in finance, and he got up there and he started blocking. And I was like, what? And about a year later, I had a meeting with him because he was a new VP. And this was one of the first people I told at work. So there was only two people that I've ever shared with that I'm a person who stutters at work. One was a good friend, and there's a long story behind that. I had a meeting with him and I said, do you have a minute? I want to talk to you about something outside of work. And he looked at me like, were you going to hit on me or something? That's what I thought he thought I was going to do. So I shut the door. And then I began to tell him, I saw you at your town hall, and, I'm, also a person who stutters. I share with him like a 5-minute thing. And it was like, I would have never thought that the person I'd come out to at work would be a VP. And after he retired, he had to email me about things that I did in my prior role. And just, I don't know, it was cool to see someone go that high. And he encouraged me a lot, like, hey, if he can do this in front of thousands of people, why can't I do it in my smaller role? So,
Cathy, that's what you're doing right now.
Well, I am doing right now. And in the back of my head, I'm going, okay, what if someone sees this from work and starts asking me about it? What if someone in my, my friends see it? And I just put that in the back of my mind. I mean,
it's like a Seinfeld episode with your worlds colliding, right?
It
and
is.
Like you said, you've kind of like gotten into, with these folks, I'm really open, and there's the Cathy who's open about talking about this stuff. But then there's the work, like holiday party crowd. No, we don't go there.
Oh, holiday parties, I'm fine. I'm
but
it's
Cathy,
just like meetings, but yeah.
Let me ask you this: being where you're at, you're in a pretty strong place, but there is that thought. There's like separate worlds, separate personas, separate things that you share in one place that you might not share in another. And by the way, that's so legitimate, right? Like there are certain things that don't belong in the work relationships and the work network that belong with your good friends and your more close social circle. It's totally legitimate. What do you think they would say if they did see it? Like, just to fantasize for a moment, let's say someone did this talk with me, not you. Yeah, because if you think about it, you're just going to blow a lid. Someone else was the same as you, and there's so many people out there, right, that they know there's something very real they're dealing with, but they keep a lid on it, and then they kind of let it out a little bit, open up a little bit, disclose a little bit, but not everywhere all the time. And they got kind of exposed more than they wanted to. And someone from, let's say their church or something, saw this conversation, and they had not been open over there. What do you think that person would think? What would they ask?
What they would ask me, or what they would ask?
No, it's not you, Kathy. It's this girl named Anne.
Someone else.
It's
This
Anne.
girl named
Anne is covert. She's trying to hide this. She's having a conversation with Uri Schneider, but she's very cautious and cagey. She doesn't want someone from the outside world to see it, because that would be like invasion, overexposure. But I'm just wondering if we could step into Anne's experience. If like someone from her church or her office, what do you think they're thinking? They would see an interview of Anne, who they don't know stutters, and she's talking about stuttering being a pretty big deal for her, but they didn't know.
I would think they would say, "Oh, that's so great! I didn't know. I mean, tell me more about it."
They'd say that was so great.
I don't even think about it.
Tell me more.
And I know that, and I tell that to other people. I say people don't go home and think about your bad luck. They think about their own. Everyone has baggage, or everyone has something about them they want to change, or they just or they want to hide. I think most people would be accepting about it. I mean, I don't even, my mother thinks I'm over it, because she'll see my son and be like, I remember when you were younger. She doesn't know every year for 18 years, 19 years, I went away with hundreds of friends. She just thought I went out of town with friends. I never told her of my, how I was involved, or how I still hide it for the most part, even around her.
What's the upside of hiding it, Kathy? I'm not pushing you in any direction. I'm interested because I think there's validity. I want to validate that. I think for myself, for example, I have things that I grapple with, that I choose to be very open and vulnerable and bring into an authentic presentation of myself. And then there are things that I might disclose in some measure. And there are things I might keep to myself. They have no business. The cost is greater than the reward, the risk is greater than what I'm ready to take and what the upside might be. So I'm just wondering, what's the voice or the rationale that Kathy has, or someone could have, to kind of like keep it under wraps with mom, or keep it from work? What's the upside of that?
I think it's just, I accept it. I think it's just, I'll take it to a different level of acceptance. I don't know. And I've pondered that before. I just think people know me a certain way, and I've hidden it for so long. I feel like I can be myself around people who stutter in any type of related event, but around people who aren't, I feel like I'm myself, but there's that piece of me. I'm just so used to, I'm like a robot. I'm used to hiding it. I'm used to changing words.
Kathy, you're so not a robot. That's not fair.
Well,
you're a creature of habit. Like, you have familiar routines, and you like your familiar routines.
I don't know. I'm just so used to doing it. And the days where I allow myself to block a lot, like at home or at NSA events, I'm more exhausted allowing it out. It's more tiring than when I hide it.
There you go. But conservation of energy.
I don't know. And there's times I say, if Dateline calls me, I'm on that show. But then I think, ooh, that would be big. I don't know. But my boys are definitely teaching me, as a mom, teaching me to be more okay with it, because they're okay with it. It took me, like, it took me up till last year to tell them, like, what's going on when your words come out, because they had no idea that they were even doing it until like in the last, like, maybe 6 months. So they're teaching me it doesn't matter. So I
remember, Kathy, just to share with people how much the NSA, National Stuttering Association, these conferences are like an alternate universe. When I go to the National Stuttering Association, just full disclosure here, I don't stutter. The greatest compliment I get is when people think I do, because they think because I understand it somewhat and I seem to be, relatable in that way, but I don't. I just listen, and I try to spend time with a lot of people and listen to their stories. And that's what gives me insight. So I went to an NSA conference, and we go to a hotel. I can't remember, someone here knows the story. I think it was Baltimore. And go to the bartender and get some seltzer, water, or whatever. Maybe I was there with Cameron Frangic. And the bartender stutters. And he starts getting orders from all these guests in the hotel. And each of them in their own way are having these stuttering experiences. And at first it's like, oh, that's not right. That's not cool. Like, what you guys, like, some people imitate me, but now I got like 20, 30, 40 people imitating me. This isn't right. What's going on? Ganging up. And then he realizes, he finds out, no, they're not making fun of you. Like, we all talk this way. This is a stuttering conference. There's 600 people here who stutter. And I think he took the next day off and joined the conference. But you know, it's interesting because in that space, I get in an elevator and I'm the minority. You know, I, as a person who does not stutter, the conversation, the cadence, the music around me is different variations of expression with different staccato and different cadence. And I'm the one that doesn't have that. And so it's just a really interesting thing, because it speaks to the fact of, it's not like one thing's good, one thing's bad. It's more like what we're accustomed to and what feels awfully different, what feels normal and what feels abnormal because it's so rare. So I think it's interesting for people listening. I'm just putting this out there. I think the upside of continuing the way you've done until now for anybody is it's what's familiar and it's kept you safe. And the exposure and vulnerability and potential pain and hurt that could come is a frightening thing. So as much as one might want to venture there, there's a lot of good reason to resist it. And if you're on that journey as a therapist, I would say a good thought or a framework could be one of many to entertain, like, what's the worst case scenario? What would happen? Let's say you kind of like ventured out. Until now, you go to bars and you always use a pseudonym because you figure it's just going to be a one-off thing. But what if you're that person that came to my dad and said, listen, I'm about to get engaged. My dad's like, congratulations. He's like, no, this is a big problem. Why? Well, I've already met the family and they still think my name is Andrew. It's not. It's Josh. I just changed my name on the first date because I didn't think anything was going to go anywhere. Now we're getting engaged. She needs to know she's not marrying Andrew. She's marrying Josh. So, you know, I think thinking about why one does what they do, what purpose it serves, because there's got to be a purpose, right? It's got to be beneficial if we keep doing it. And then if you want to change something, it goes back to what I said earlier. I think you got to think not all or nothing. It's got to be shades of comfort, of just stepping out and branching out that comfort zone. So I think about people like kids, when you go away for a day or two, maybe you go to bed and breakfast or there's a swimming pool. And like one kid is still tiptoeing around the pool. He hasn't gone in the pool. And like you've been there for a day and a half. And it's like, come on, kid, we got another half a day. We got the place with the pool. You're not even going in the, come on. Do you kick the kid in the pool? Do you tell him, I'll hold your hand, we'll go in together. I got you. I won't let you go. Or do you say, he needs his dandy old time? Because if we rush him, we're going to start the clock all over again. And I think with this, it's somewhat similar. How are we? Do we want to make a big jump and we want someone to push us to kind of go have this watershed experience? Or we want support, want to do it with someone that's going to be there through the experience? Or do we just need to take our dandy old time? Some people get there in a quicker pace, some people get there later. So just some thoughts of how I look at variability for different people to expand. If you have time, Cathy, do you have a few minutes? Because I know you.
Oh, yeah, I got the day off, so.
Great. So we're going to do a 24-hour conversation. No.
Yes.
But maybe you could share just about being a mom of boys who stutter and how they're teaching you. I think that's such a beautiful thing. And as a father of 4, I'm always wowed by the times that I give my kids the space to do things that I was scared to let them do because I thought they'd get hurt or I thought they couldn't do it. So I'll tell my kids, you know, like, back then I worried, you know, and now I see you. I see how hard you work. I see how resourceful you are. I see what a great problem solver you are. And I see you're making it. Like, now I know you're going to make it. And I tell my kids, problem solving is the most important skill, more than calculus, more than biology, you know, problem solving and that kind of stuff. So for you, I'm sure your kids aren't just doing it from nowhere. I'm sure it has a lot to do with their mom and their dad. But what's for you that experience of being a mom, being a woman who stutters, having 2 beautiful boys, and they're going through this experience? What are I don't know. I'm sure that's a lot there. So maybe you could just share the nuggets that you like.
You know, I think all of us, you know, who when we have kids, if there's something about ourselves that we really don't want to pass on to them, this was one thing. So I thought, well, I mean, of all things, this is fine. But when you're having kids, you're like, I don't want to pass on this fluency, something I spent most of my life hating, onto my children. But the key is to, if you want to change, is to help them realize, at least in my case, that it's no big deal. It's just a piece of you. It's a small piece. Don't let it get in the way. I've been telling them, that since day one, don't let anything get in the way of what you do, or, in anyone. And when my oldest Luke, when he was 3, when, he began to talk, he was a delayed, he had delayed speech. There were some blocks in that, but I thought, oh, he's learning how to talk. And then it just never went away. And we would be around my friends who didn't know, and they'd be like, he's stuttering. And once in a while I would be like, yeah, I do too. And then I'd move on. I'd change. I totally didn't want to talk about it. Other times I'd be like, yeah, he's in speech, and it's like, they've taught me to own more, to be a better parent, to help them. And they've never let it get in the way of what they're saying. If I interrupt them, just because of like time, like, let's go, they keep talking and they say, I'm not done talking. And I'm like, that's great. I would have never done that. You can finish my sentences. With them, you can't. So I don't think it's anything I'm doing. I think it's just them. I think part of it is us making it known. You can say what you want to say, take your time, but it's really them holding their own ground. So I've never taught my son, if you're teased, this is what you do. I was right there, and I couldn't believe he did that. And so I asked him, I said, why did you tell him that? Well, because that's not right. It's just who I am. And I'm like, that's what I've been telling him. It's just a piece of who you are. But I didn't.
You keep putting away the credit that you deserve, because you did tell him that. It's just a part of who you are.
Yeah, I told him
that was the seed. That was the seed, Cathy, I think, that sprouted, that really, became this courage muscle for him to say, like, wait a second, that's just who I am. There's no one has a right to make fun of that. I'm gonna finish my sentence. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. He, I mean, at 6 years old, I wouldn't have done that at 26 or even last year, or I need to be better at doing that. So actually it's reversed. They're teaching me to be better at being more open about it and less ashamed. I think in the last 4 or 5 years, I've become a little bit more open. Like when I meet new people here, like when they share about, oh, I hate this about myself, be like, well, so there's been a few people I've told, but even I go back to, even if they know, I still don't allow my blocks out. So and you gave me a lot to think about when you said, what would be so bad if I did? Why do I continue to hide? Like, and I don't know those answers.
Well, I said it a little differently, because I'm not judging it negatively. I want to judge it favorably. What's the upside? What does it serve you? How does it help? And I think what you said a few times, which is valid. I'm here to help people see. I think you represent, first of all, a woman's voice, and there aren't as many women sharing their stories. So I thank you for that. And many people have appreciated that. I think that you're a person in a career path. Our good friend, also Derek Mitchell down from Georgia, shout out to Derek, talked about similar, working in HR and working with people, and there were challenging moments. But I think the message for many people is you can do anything. You can be in HR in a Fortune 500 company and climb that ladder and make it and have a family and do all these things, even if you're not perfect, even if you're still not fully on the end of the journey that you dream to be moving along. So I think that's beautiful. And I also want to give permission to figure out your comfort zone, not measured by someone else's yardstick. And I think for everybody to ask themselves, well, why do I do this? It must serve a purpose. And I think for you, that familiarity, like you said, it's like you're a creature of habit, and and we can change habits. That's what's nice about habits. You can't change if you stutter. You can't change the color of your skin, But you can change habits. If you're not a morning person, it might never be easy, but if you do it enough times and you crank back the clock, you wake up the alarm clock 10 minutes earlier for a month and keep cranking it back. You could train yourself, those kinds of things. Those are habits, quality of life. And then if you decide this isn't working for me, like I'm tired by the end of the day and I'm a night owl, I want to go back to being a night owl, just go right back to being a night owl. But if it brings you greater satisfaction to make that shift, then that's great. And I think with stuttering, it's very nuanced, and not enough people, I think we need to talk about that nuance more. Like, what's an open variable, what's a closed variable, what's legitimate and what's not legitimate. And I think there's more room for people to kind of like do things their way, but chase the things they want to chase. So, you know, with your kids, for example, and I want to say to all the parents, adults, speech therapists, and I think, Cathy, I'd love your feedback. I think the most important thing is keep your kids talking and to destigmatize whatever it is. Not because you're saying this is the way it's going to be and you're resigning to this is it for life. On the contrary, if you destigmatize it and you keep them talking, which is the goal, keep them connected and social and expressive and curious, that's what it's all about. And that's the biggest risk with stuttering and many speech communication differences, is it could impair the person's comfort with just being themselves, just being who they really are, their full spirit of curiosity and interest and confidence and just going for things. That's what's at risk. It's not about how they talk. So I think it's beautiful when a parent doesn't see it as their job to smother the stutter, you know, eliminate the stutter, erase the stutter. That might be one of a couple things. You might want to make it easier for them. But number one, top line and bottom line, keep them talking, keep them feeling good about themselves. And the way you do that is by what you did, Cathy, giving them values. That's what my dad will always say, right? Giving values is an emotional strategy, just like a speech strategy, giving them values to know just a part of you, you know? So using language that's descriptive, not judgmental, making it something we can talk about, making it a topic that's not taboo. It's, you know, I had a hard day. I fell, I tripped and I scraped my knee. Oh, I shot that basketball shot. Everybody was hoping I'd make it and I airballed. Oh, they put me in the team. Oh, great. How'd it go? I forgot which way we were going. I got a rebound and I shot a basket for the wrong team. It happens. It happens. Happened to me. So I think that those lessons I just want to highlight, and I think that's what you've done, is that we give our kids values, let them find their way, and realize that that's legit. And as you said, we learn from the next generation. My father always said that to me. That was his hope as a father, my mother as a mother, that there would be things that me and my brother would have opportunities they didn't have, and somehow achieve things that they felt they couldn't achieve themselves, but they wanted to pass that opportunity to us, me and my brother, if we chose it. And I see that my wife and I, what we try to do for our kids. So I think that's very healthy, you know, learning from our kids' examples, seeing the courage that they exhibit. And most importantly, with covert, what you're giving your kids early on is showing them the courage to let it out and to be authentic. Once you start doing the covert thing, like you said, that becomes your routine. It's harder to shift for a while till you get to a really comfortable place. But for all of our kids, if they stutter, we have to be very nuanced and delicate and thoughtful and deliberate, that whatever we do to help them make it easier to get their words out, the first thing and the last thing should be that they feel okay and that they feel like they can express themselves and be heard no matter what. What do you think of that?
So let me ask you this, because this is key for a lot of the SLPs out there. How would you treat a person who stutters, who's covert, who's like me, that doesn't want to be open about it? Because that's always a topic that is very interesting.
You want to go there? We're going to go there?
Yeah, I do. I would like to.
Beautiful. Well, I did tell you, and I've enjoyed telling everybody and my future guests, flip the table, please, you know, go ahead. That's fantastic. I want it to be a real give and take. And just to acknowledge again, some really beautiful comments. I've tried to weave them in, and whatever we don't get to, I'm sure that Cathy and I will try to go through and respond personally, but we appreciate all of you coming and your comments and your shares. It means a lot to us, and it also helps get this conversation out there. So first of all, and I mean this more than it sounds like a cliche, we don't look at people as covert and overt. That's not really in our lexicon. You know, people come to us because there's something about communication where they feel held back. Something about the way they talk, or their spouse or their child or their parent is going through something that connecting openly, communicating successfully is getting interfered with. So I think the question I would ask the person who comes, who presents as covert, which means they're pretty darn good at hiding the stutter. It's not a huge experience on the surface. So a lot of people may have told them, what? It's not worth dealing. Yeah, you're fine. What are you doing? You don't even stutter. You know, you're over it, Cathy. You're done. I'm so happy you don't stutter like you did when you were 16. How do I tell you that it's still a big deal? So first of all, validating that the person knows why they're there. So if it's an adult or a teenager, why are they there? So for some people, it's because they have such a rocking horse, such a wild horse in their stuttering, they couldn't control it to save the world. And those are the words of Frankie Jones and Michael Lieben in the film Transcending Stuttering, the documentary. And then there's people who were more covert, like a Taro Alexander, or others who, really were hoping no one would notice, hoping it wouldn't stop them in their pursuit of relationships and career. And then like you, Taro has a very similar example where he gets on the stage and he has this really moment of exposure and he trips up on the line, he has a stutter, and he feels like his whole career path is shot. And he opens up to his roommate who tells him, well, I stutter too. And he's like, no, I never heard you stutter. How could it be? It doesn't compute. I think the person who hides the stutter, but it's a big deal for them, I would be looking at, first of all, what's not going well? Like, what do you want to do more? What do you want to do less? Maybe you want to be a motivational speaker. You don't want to be in HR. Maybe you want to be the CEO of Ford and you don't want to be on the track that you're on, or maybe whatever. What is it you want to achieve that you can? Or maybe you're tired of managing it. It's been exhausting. So I would ask a person with reverence that they know themselves, what brought you? What makes it worthwhile taking the time to sit with me? And I don't think it's about the speech as much as you want something, and this gets in the way. I think of Patch Adams, the Patch Adams movie?
Oh, yeah.
Favorite movie. So he says, he goes to I think it was a psychiatric hospital, and there's all these people there, and they tell him, oh, this guy comes up and he says, how many fingers you see? How many fingers you see? And he says this to everybody, and everybody says 4. And this older gentleman putting his hand in everybody's face, wearing a hospital gown, he's, oh, you idiots. And so everybody writes him off and figures he's lost his mind because obviously there's 4 fingers. But Patch Adams says there's something there. There's a human being in there. And it turns out he was like a mathematician genius. So Patch Adams goes to the room at night. And this man was like one of these really groggy, nasty, grumpy old guys that nobody wanted to engage because it was going to be trouble. Patch Adams goes and he sees that his tea is dripping on his paper, and he fixes the leak. And the gentleman turns around and shows him a little bit of softer side. Thank you. And so Patch Adams says to the man, he says, what's with the 4? What's with the fingers? So the gentleman says to him like this, and I think it's such a great story and such a great analogy for stuttering. He says, how many fingers do you see, my friend? And Patch Adams says, listen, if I say what I see, you're going to react the same way you do all day. He says, no, look carefully. You see 4. He says, look carefully. If you focus on the fingers, you see 4 fingers. But everybody now, wherever you are, Cathy, you could do it too. Take your own hand, put up your 4 fingers, put them between your face and the screen that you're looking at, and look at your fingers, and you'll see 4 fingers. Now, if you focus not on your fingers, but you focus on the screen behind your fingers, bring your hand halfway between you and the screen, or maybe even closer to your face, and you focus on the screen, you'll notice that you start to see 8 fingers. You see it? If you focus on the screen, don't focus on your fingers. Put your focus on the screen.
Yeah.
Boom. So the point that this character was there to teach all of us is that we think that the hand is the problem. The hand is the distraction. What we want to go for. If we stay focused on the screen, the things and obstacles that stand in the way start to fade away, and they start to look quite different. So I think the person who's covert may come in thinking the solution is to get rid of the stutter or stop stuttering, or maybe the solution is I got to be open everywhere. Frankly, none of those are right. The person who comes in, especially an adult, is coming because there's something that's not clicking yet. There's something in their professional, personal, social life that they feel is too costly, too effortful, too much compromising, too much facade, too much effort to keep up this charade, this identity that's not me. Or there's something they want to get, and they've been able to succeed at levels that everyone is wowed by, but for themselves, they have an unmet ambition that they have not yet embodied. That's what I want to know. Because when we figure that out, for example, there were things that you said, Cathy, you know, when I asked you, what might you want to be doing? Like, what difference would it make if you didn't still have a little bit of the baggage of ducking and dodging? I think that's the question everyone should ask themselves. Whatever, it can be your own emotional stuff, it can be circumstantial stuff in your life, it could be your physical living space is too small, it could be, you know, a child with a learning challenge, whatever it is, that's not the problem. You know, the problem for many parents with a child who stutters is, I wanted him to have a good social life in middle school. I wanted him to be able to get into this college and have this job and work at Ford and HR. And now that he stutters, there's no way he'll ever do that. Or I want him to be the CEO of GE, General Electric. There's no way that kid could be. He stutters. But then you look at Jack Welch, and in the same sense, you look at Cathy.
He worked
of course.
Yes.
Listen, everybody went through Ford. Let's have some Ford pride, American pride. But this is a day to be proud of whatever we can in America. But you know, you look at Jack Welch and you look at Cathy, and those parents can say, wow, kid who stutters can grow up to be anything, can do anything they want to do. For the person who is still bothered by their stutter or bothered by the hiding of it, there isn't like a binary answer of it's got to be like this or it's got to be like this. The question is, how do we get to the goals? So if you might run some meetings differently, or you might do certain conversations instead of using the email as much as you might, or things like that, or you don't like the way you get on that phone call or introduce yourself at that conference call or whatever, then that's what we should work on and toe our ways into that, as opposed to thinking we got to solve the finger problem. The problem is not the fingers. The fingers are just a distraction. We got to deal with them to the measure that they're getting in the way. But if we focus on the fingers, we'll never get to the real stuff. And the real stuff lies beyond the fingers. So I try to keep our focus on the goal and then deal with anything in the way as it comes. But most people, once they get there, they know exactly what they need. And often they can help themselves quite a bit. And if we can be a guide or a support along the way, or a community of people can be a support, God bless, that's great. Having a mentor like a Cathy could be great.
Well, I have to tell you, I've been on all ends. People have said, well, just try being open or, you know, for many, many years. But the way you phrased asking me that, it made me think more than anyone. Why? What is the big deal? Like, why am I not, like, at this point in my life? So you give me something to think about. And there's sometimes I dream about, like, you know, it's NSA Day, or it's not NSA Day, it's National NSAW and NSA Day. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool just to put a post out there and get feedback? And every time we go to raise money, I'd probably raise a little bit more, because I have a lot of friends who are very supportive. But I don't know, I just can't bring myself to do that.
But Cathy, I just want
to, but I don't know how. So you've given me some thought-provoking things to think about.
You brought it out of me, but I would say consider it in measure. Like, you don't have to post it publicly. You could share it on Messenger with a few people. And I think that, again, going back to like framing everything in a positive way, Cathy, is important, because you'll frame it, or many people frame it as, why don't I do that? Like, what's wrong with me? That's what some people say. You know, why do I keep doing the same thing that I'm unhappy at? Why do I keep doing that? But ask it in a positive way. What does that serve me? First of all, what do I want? What do I really want? And then once you know what you really want, you figure out, well, does that habit, does that way of coping, does that adaptation help me get it? With openness on Facebook, to be totally honest, there are many causes and topics. Let's take my vote. I think is a great example. I'm not going to say who I voted for, and we're not going to get political. But it's exactly that point. In America, there's a value, there's a respect for the democratic process that we don't talk about who we voted for. And that is something that is sacrosanct. That's something that we respect for a reason. And as most of us grew up in America, that was something you just didn't even ask. You didn't talk about it. So especially when the conversations are hot, I'm surprised by many people who really go out there and say all kinds of things as if someone's going to change their opinion because they saw them posting on Facebook. So in that case, openness is not the answer. A little bit of modesty and keeping it private is a virtue. So I think similarly, like there are topics about my religious identity or about maybe my other identities that I have. We all have so many hats that we wear. We might not want that in the public space, and we might not want that to be such a prominent thing about the way people think about us. It doesn't mean we're doing anything bad. It could be deliberate. It could help us. Like, I don't want people to think of me having an opinion about a certain hot topic, not because I'm scared to voice my opinion, but I don't want that to create barriers or create friction. I want to create comfort and real connection and space for openness. And if I bring certain things in, it could either make me uncomfortable, make them uncomfortable, and I don't want that. So my goal is openness and connection, and I kind of dial up and dial things down accordingly. I'll leave you with this last thought. It was from a business podcast that I think this comes from Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, one of them. A beautiful thought about how to make decisions, and it applies to what we're talking about. You got to think of the upsides. Let's say a friend comes to you and says, listen, you got $100? I got an investment. It's going to be 10x return. Like, wow, sounds awesome. Like, who wouldn't want to go in on that, right? Early, it's not insider information. It's just like sort of insider information, but we won't get in trouble. Okay. Now, if you're smart, what's the next question you ask? Teach your kids to ask, what's the downside? Well, there's no downside. It's going to be 10x, but the investor needs to know there's a possibility you lose the whole thing. That's the downside. So most of us make decisions based on that. We stop there. So when it's money, it's very simple, it's metric. But all these things, all the risks we take in life are really the same. What's the upside? What's the downside? And the next question is the magic question, which was suggested is only asked by the Warren Buffetts and the Bill Gates, and now all of us could steal it as well. What's the upside? 10x return. What's the downside? I lose the whole thing. Still don't know how to make a decision because it's very enticing. If I only got $100, I'm all in. 10x? Whew. My FDIC insured bank account doesn't do that much. My mutual fund doesn't do that much. I don't get many chances to get in early before I see it in the news and wish I got in. So I'm going all in, but I could lose it all, but I could win it all. The best question is the third one, which is, can I live with the downside? So if you have another $1,000 in the bank, give your friend $100 could be a reasonable thing because maybe you could live with the downside, but for someone else, maybe that downside is not something they can tolerate. So I think as we venture to expand our comfort zones, we all know there's something waiting on the other side of where we've created these imaginary lines, but there's reason not to just jump out there and just, go full on naked, right? There's an upside, there's a downside, and we need to be ready to live with the downside. And if we are, then it's worth taking the risk because there is an upside waiting there, but we also can't put ourselves in a position that the downside would crush us. So I think everybody could use that potentially in this conversation as well. What do you think?
I agree with that. Points to ponder.
Points to ponder. Well, it's been record-setting time. We covered a lot. I want to thank you, Cathy. Thank everybody, a lot of our friends for coming. And I'll give Cathy the opportunity for the final words, but I just want to thank everybody for the time, attention, concentration. I think this was extremely honest, personal, and open, which is not easy and not to be taken for granted. So I want to thank you, Cathy. I think a lot of the people that were here created a safe space, even though it's just virtual support. You're near and dear to Cathy and known and dear to me as well, many of you, and those that are not yet, we hope to get to know you more. I give a plug for the National Stuttering Association, westutter.org. Tons of programming going on. Great opportunities, especially in the area of employment. So people that are looking for ways to kind of crack that or just talk about, the challenges there and opening doors there. There are more opportunities to talk about that and even get access into interviews or mock interviews. There's all kinds of great stuff. National Stuttering Association is leading with many good programs, and there's lots of other good stuff. You can see the playback of this and all the conversations at schneiderspeech.com/events. And we also want to do for the end of the year, if you're still here, you're a real fan. At the end of the year, we want to create like a highlight mashup. We could just do this one as the highlight, but we should take from all of them. So if you have certain interviews or certain moments that you liked, I would love if you could share with us, which episode or which moment you felt would be a highlight, and then we can kind of create a beautiful compilation and co-create that together. So I'll leave it to Cathy to take us home.
I just wanted to advise anyone who's hearing this for the first time and you wander upon these videos, definitely seek out the National Stuttering Association. And there's local chapters all over the US. If there's not one in your area, you could begin it, but reach out. They have online Zooms now. They have in-person meetings, some of them do, so definitely reach out. You are not alone. And for those of you who would like to join, we have a covert Facebook group that's private, so it won't show up in your feed. It'll only show up in your feed, but no one could see your member. You can reach out to me directly, or you can search for covert, proves I'm not, stuttering support, and you could find us there. So I just want to give that plug. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great, and thank you for all the work you do. You're very passionate in your role and how you educate, and just having a forum for people to share their journey is helping. Not only did this help me, but it's going to help others. And every interview you do does that. So thank you
very much for that.
For us.
Thank you. You mentioned people could contact you for that information. Do you want to share, or you could let me know if there's any contact that you want to share? Would you have a preferred method, or you want to let me know later?
Oh, yeah, no, if you want to look me up on Facebook, it's Cathy Olish-Maciejewski. Just type Olish and it'll be easy to find. Or my email is Cat, C-A-T, and then my last name, CATMACIEJEWSKI@gmail.com. Love to talk with you and help you out as a person who stutters, as someone who hides it, or as a parent as well.
That's very generous. Very generous. Well, I can tell there's a lot that Cathy can share and offer, and I appreciate the time in this conversation, and hopefully the first of many. And listen, you brought the Massey and I brought the Jewski. Together, it works. So signing off, thank everybody, wish everybody stay healthy, stay well, and take care of yourself, and connect with other people and have conversations. And let's try to restore the decency and the ability to connect with people that we might disagree with, and people that might have different experiences than us. And if we listen, we can learn and expand our understanding and experience and perspective beyond the confines of our limited life that we've had till now. It can enrich us, and we should not be too scared to do that, because everybody in this country and the world really just wants to have a conversation and be able to be heard and to reciprocate that. And for people that can't give you that, don't talk to them. Everybody be well.